Hello, everyone. This is y'all's lovely Vice President, Edward Tunisian. I'm the social media manager for Internet Infidels as well. Y'all know me for my published paper on the origin of evil and theistic determinism, which has made its way into book form on Amazon Prime. The book is called Drop a Reason Essays from the Secular Web. Check it out on Amazon Prime. And today, for the seventh time, I'm going to be interviewing the king of all Christmas theorists, the great and legendary Richard Carrier. And before
Hey.
we begin the questions, I'll have him give a brief introduction for himself, just in case this is the first time people are, getting to know him. And he can tell us about his upcoming works and his projects and his life, and we'll begin the questions after that. So take it away, sir.
You bet. Richard Carrier, historian, philosopher, lots of publications. Um, I teach courses. I've got a blog that's one of the rare long form blogs that still exists. And anybody wants to know anything more about me, you can find it all at richardcarrier.info. That's .info. So it's just my name, .info online. And then you can find all my books, my many books, my articles, and all the stuff is produced there. Today, I think we're kind of combining both subjects of biblical studies and philosophy a little bit. I have peer-reviewed publications in both those fields as I work in both, and as particularly in free will and mythology interpretation and things like that.
Sweet. All right. So to begin the first question, we're going to talk about why and how Adam and Eve, assuming they existed, sinned. And this has been a problem for every Christian theologian, Roman Catholics, especially Calvinists, because Calvinists don't even believe Adam had libertarian freedom or the ability to do other than what he did, even when he was in innocency. And the reason this question has stumped them is because they can't think of a motive as to why he would sin. You can't just say, well, they just had free will, because it's like, why did they use their free will? And according to the Bible, Jesus allegedly had free will, but yet was not able to sin. He could only do the good necessarily and willingly. So just saying, and he had free will, so necessarily just saying free will doesn't prove exactly why they were able to use it. And I'm just going to quote my article briefly because I go into exactly what enables people to choose. So, before I discuss exactly why Christians have had the trouble with the issue, some can simply claim that they can make a decision without even needing a reason or motive. They may say, I don't need any impetus to make my choice, I have free will. Though it initially can seem that way, this is in fact false. First, it is self-evident that every effect demands a cause, an efficient cause. Objects fall towards the earth, effect because of gravity, cause. Likewise, when people or even animals make decisions, their choice effect needs a motivation or inclination to have enabled them to make that decision. And if anyone has only one inclination to do something, that motivation will literally determine cause their choice. For example, if I'm 100% inclined not to eat dog waste and have zero inclination to eat it, I cannot eat it, even if I possess the part of my brain that, if I were to access it, would allow me to eat it, for I would then have no motive or reason to eat the waste. It is also helpful to note that nothing would be wrong with my freedom, for I would be free to do whatever I desired, I just would not desire the waste. Since it has now been shown that it takes a motivation to do anything, or to even knowingly do nothing, which would require you to want that first as well, figuring out the sin of Adam and Eve is simple. And so, just to make a long story short, so you need a good inclination to do good, you need an inclination to evil. That's what gives you an interest to do evil and enables you to do evil. And you need a morally neutral inclination, like to have like a certain ice cream to do what's non-moral. So, in the end, you're going to have to say that when Adam was tempted, he had both a holy and evil disposition, and then willingly chose to give into the evil disposition, and also simultaneously the inclination to secretive wisdom, which God would have had to have created that in them as well, and then they ended up sinning. So now the question is, how could an evil inclination arise in a holy being? Well, the answer is God would have had to have made them morally imperfect. And so that's how the evil inclination came about. You can't blame it on the devil, because if they would have been holy and tempted by the devil, an evil inclination wouldn't have spouted out of them. You can't blame it on Adam, because it's not his fault he had an experience of temptation. So God did something different with their natures. And so the reason that ultimately is what enabled Adam and Eve to sin is a moral imperfection, a dysfunctionality, something bad gave them the ability to sin. It wasn't something good. And so I'll just stop here and let you give your commentary on this, and
Yeah,
then we can
yeah.
move on. Yeah.
Yeah, what this is an internal critique, right? So like we're assuming that everything they're saying about this is true and that really wasn't Adam and Eve and the story actually happened. Obviously we don't believe it did, but 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 internally it doesn't make any sense. I should say internally it doesn't make any sense from a modern point of view, and that includes modern Christian point of view, which is the problem you're pointing out. is that Christians have so reinterpreted this story that it's completely disconnected from what the original authors actually meant the story to be. Arguably, the Calvinists might have been getting back to the original intent, which was not commendable. And you're hitting on the point here is that obviously God had to engineer Adam and Eve to sin, right? So like, and you give the example of like when Jesus was tempted by the devil, he not only did he resist temptation, but there was obviously no probability of him being tempted, right? Like it's not like God sent Jesus and, well, I don't know, 50-50, flipping a coin, he might side with the devil. Obviously no Christian is going to say that, right? Like so clearly like Jesus had the right inclinations. He was well designed, and therefore he'd go like, "Ah, that's a dumb thing. Why would I do what you're asking? I've got a better plan." And so, so like you said, he has to have reasons. It's the how he's designed and built. So Adam and Eve were obviously just badly designed, right? Like there's this they were designed literally to fail this test, is the way to put it. Especially if you take it from the point of view that God is all knowing. Now, it's worth pointing out that when the authors of Genesis wrote this story, they did not believe in the modern omni God, right? So they don't imagine a God who knows everything, and they don't imagine a God who's perfect, or even a God who's disembodied for that matter, right? But in modern, now that Christians have sold themselves on this idea that God knows everything and can never make a mistake, this idea of perfection, right? Um, that means that there's only one way that Adam and Eve could have sinned, is that God intended them to do so, that he built them badly with the purpose of fucking them over, basically, right? And that kind of gets closer to like what the real original message was, because it's really a folk tale. It's folk tales often have like contradictory, nonsensical, unscientific ideas behind them, and this is one of them. But your analysis is correct in terms of the modern Christian theory that there's just modern Christianity can't fix this. You would have to go back to the sort of primitive, like ignorant, unscientific view of thousands of years ago, which of course is blatantly, obviously false, and even Christians agree that it's naive and false, and so they can't go back, right? So they can't fix this. And also, if they did it and they fixed it, what they would be fixing is a fundamentally immoral story, and therefore committing to it being immoral and selling the immoral thing as moral, which is, not a good look and is not going to do well for selling the religion. So you're right that you've caught Christians in a trap here, and there's not much they can do about it. There are this. You're not the first to notice this. There's when I read your article, I was thinking of two other really good, like deep philosophical explorations of the exact same point. And one is Ken Pulliam. So Ken Pulliam is a ex-fundamentalist preacher who got a PhD in theology and then became an atheist and wrote some really good stuff. And he did a thing called The Absurdity of the Atonement, um, in John Loftus's volume, At the End of Christianity, which has chapters by me and various other people. It's an excellent book. Lots of great chapters in there. But Pulliam's chapter, now he's talking about the how could Jesus fix this with by dying on the cross. But that comes back to discussing this. What he was he supposed to fix is the point that you're getting at, right? Like what is how does dying on the cross fix this? And like you're pointing out, like, well, you need to better engineer people, but dying on the cross doesn't do that. So that
Point.
right, so that's part of the problem with the fundamental heart of Christianity is this atonement theory. Ken Pulliam shows that atonement theory makes no sense and is completely illogical. So Christianity fails on multiple fronts. But someone who went right at the point that you're making, which is going right at the illogical nature of original sin and the whole concept of it, is Richard Schenig. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but he has two PhDs, one in chemistry and the other in philosophy. And he wrote a really good, really excellent criticism of Christianity, a book recently. And that's called Where Christianity Errs. And his whole chapter one is about this. So there are multiple people have noticed this. They go at it from different angles than the free will angle that you do, but it's still the same essential point: is that the only reason Adam and Eve could fail at this is if God made them defective, right? Like right, and in exactly the way that He didn't make Jesus defective. And so He's making these choices to like do this. And so yeah, like your analysis is correct there. I was thinking when I was reading it. And looking at that and thinking in terms of the original intent of the authors, right? So this is a folk tale, It's meant to explain, it's called an ideological myth. So it's supposed to explain something that people are dealing with. It's supposed to explain two things. Why are people so shitty? And why is life so shitty? Why is life so hard? And why are people awful, right? And it creates this sort of like really dumb, fable to explain this. And the fable is based on the principle that, because if you notice, like the tree of knowledge and good and evil is what they haven't eaten. So actually, they literally lack knowledge of good and evil. Therefore, they could not possibly have made a correct choice, right? Like God has deliberately made them ignorant to cause them to make a bad choice because they don't know it's bad because they don't have the knowledge of what is bad and good, right? Because they haven't eaten the fruit yet. So this is clearly a setup. Like God has set this up on purpose so that they will fail, so that he could kick them out, so that he could punish them, and so on. And the lesson is, if you look at the end of the lesson, right? The lesson is, oh, this explains why women have such a hard time in labor, why men have to work so hard, why there's so much misery and evil in the world. It explains all of this stuff, right? And it's from the perspective, you think of Adam and Eve as children, right? Because they are children, literally. They're being described as children. They do not lack, or they do not have knowledge, mature adult knowledge. They don't know right from wrong because they haven't been taught it yet. This is the idea that they're supposed to eat the tree. It's kind of like THX 1138, where you like eat food and then you gain the knowledge or whatever. But that's the point, is that they are basically described as children in this thing, making a bad decision because they don't know it's bad, and then being treated like adults. So now you wake up and now you're like having a horrible life and people are awful and you got to work hard and all this stuff. And it's really trying to explain that in terms of the way, if you look at like spoil the rod, spoil the child idea in the Bible, where like children really secretly know they're doing wrong and therefore you have to beat them, right? Like the only way to teach them is to beat and punish them, make them feel pain, and then they'll learn. And so this fable is basically treating all humanity as children and in that sort of twisted sense, right? We today don't see that as abhorrent, right? This is monstrous. The idea that you have to beat children to get them to learn. We know that's not true, right? But that's the authors of this text who do believe that. They believe that the only way children will become good is if you torture and punish them, make them miserable. And so it's creating an analogy between, oh, look how how we have to educate our kids. That's what God's doing with us, right? And so, like, it's a really shitty, dumb explanation for evil, but it's what they're doing, right? And it's based on this idea. It's based on this idea that there's only one way that you can be good in this system is to be miserable. Like you have to be caused by miseries to learn that you have to what you have to do, and the bad people get punished more and more because they never learn, and so on. It's a very naive, childish view of the world, but that's what they're doing in this. And so the authors actually think this is a cool idea. Everything I just said that you think is and we think is horrific, they think this is a great idea. Like they're on board with this because they're like pre-moral thinkers. They're not like morally wise. They're primitive and largely immoral in their worldview. And so they actually think this is a good way to explain evil. We today are more sophisticated, more educated, more wise. We know this is a terrible way to explain that. Because they're not thinking about what you're thinking about or what modern Christians are thinking about in terms of, oh, it was free will. Like they have no concept of what that has to do with anything. It's not relevant to them, right? But they created this story, and now Christians have said it's true, and they're stuck, right? They can't undo the story. They can't say, oh, that's a bad story, because now they're defaming their own holy book and therefore kicking the legs out from their own religion. So yeah, so this puts them in the corner that you've found them in, is this idea that if once you start talking about it, it's clearly a setup. There's nothing righteous about this story, right? Like the idea like God built them to fail, deliberately kept the knowledge from them that they needed to do the decision correctly. Like he's literally setting up this conundrum that is deliberately taking the knowledge away from them and then punishing them from gaining the knowledge that they needed to do the right thing. Right. So it's a completely contradictory system, but he had to have built them to do that. Like you said, otherwise they wouldn't. And you brought the example of the poop, right? Like no one would eat. And here's what the usual like free willer will say to you like that. It's like, well, I mean, yeah, obviously you have no inclination to eat the poop, but what if someone was gonna die unless you ate the poop, right? And you say, well, then I would have an inclination, right? Like you're creating a causal system of reasons for me to do it, right? So, like, first of all, like someone's gonna die, and now that's a system that's been set up. Who could have set it up? It would have to be God. The inclination to like save someone's life by eating poop would have to be installed in me by God in this scenario. or the disinclination. It'd like say, "Oh, fuck them! I'm not eating poop. Let them die." Like if they did that, that would have to be God. Would have to have built that
Yeah.
sequence of reasoning into them, and especially for Adam and Eve because they have no parents except God, so you can't blame the parents, right, for miseducating them. Right, God is their parent. He's the one who's responsible for educating them and raising them up to be moral people, and he's the one who gave them all the inclinations and disinclinations that they had. So yeah, in the modern Christian theory is built on so many bad ideas that they're completely stuck in this twisted, no way out situation that you've caught them in, and that's I think that's the a good thing to point out. Although Christians often like to weasel out of these things with their own made up stories as to why you're wrong or whatever. But um,
Yeah,
so
and just to give some commentary on that before we go into why
yeah,
God didn't make Adam and Eve as holy as Christ. So a Christian one time argued with me and said, well, Adam didn't need an inclination specifically to disobedience because he had the inclination to secretive wisdom. That already would have enabled him, which
right,
God would have been the sufficient cause of that. So that's just taking the problem a step back. Secondly, like, for example, in the life of Christ, according to the Bible at least, when he was tempted to really eat food, he was really inclined to eat food. Yet that did not enable him to sin against God when tempted by the devil. Why? Because he would also have to have an inclination to disobedience, a sin inclination, which he
yeah,
didn't have that. So as long as that's at zero, even if he's inclined to eat the food, he cannot eat the food because he's like, if I did this, this would be disobeying God. I don't have a sin inclination to disobey God, therefore I can't sin in the scenario. Therefore, going to Adam and Eve, an inclination to secretive wisdom would not have enabled them to sin an inclination to disobedience, a sin inclination, is the only thing that would have served as a motivation to disobey God. So that gets out of that issue.
yeah.
Secondly, yeah, and
And
so
I would add to
go.
that you don't even need the inclination to do bad. You can just have the lack of inclination to obey, right? Because he's there's no without eating the tree of knowledge of good and evil, Adam and Eve don't even have the knowledge that obeying is good, right? So they don't even have an inclination to obey, really, right?
Oh,
Like
that
so,
that's true.
and so it's both, though. You're right. It's the fact that they would have to, first of all, like give a shit about the knowledge of the tree, like that would have to be installed in them. Like why else would they not? Why else would they care, right? Like
Yeah,
you
good
look at
point.
like most American voters don't even watch the news because they're just uninterested in knowledge. Adam and Eve could have been built that way. Like uninterested. Like, why do I care about that? What good is that? Right? Like there'd have
Good
to be a
point.
reason for them to want it, and that reason could only get in them if God built it in them. And that's all God's design. He did that. So that's you're correct in that sense, but we got to remember also there's the no inclination to do good either because they don't know anything about they don't even know how to label things as good or bad because that's precisely the knowledge that God is keeping from them and going to damn them for getting. So yeah,
Yeah, and so there's that issue, and then yeah, there's the issue that yeah, Christians will try to get around this and say, well, it was the knowledge of the experience of evil, but the text doesn't say anything about the knowledge of the experience. It just says knowledge of also good and evil. Now, if they had
that's right.
good natures, how can they have knowledge of good from this tree if they
Yeah,
already have knowledge of good? So, and like it's like when the Bible says, "Oh, these infants, they're innocent because they don't have the knowledge of good and evil." It means they're not culpable. Like the 1-year-old isn't culpable.
yeah,
So,
right.
therefore, the tree of knowledge of good and evil. The best explanation is that it would have given them the knowledge of good and evil, which means prior they're not moral agents.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So there's that
Right.
issue.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it literally is punishing a 1-year-old for not knowing ovens are hot,
An adult body.
right?
Yeah.
Like, like, and you say, don't touch the oven, and it touches the oven because they don't know, right? They don't understand what the command is. They don't have the
And he's
knowledge.
inclining. He
And then
created them
what
with an
do? You like
inclination to
beat the shit
the
out of
tree.
them, right? Yeah, it's like that's not the
He
way you
created them
raise
with an
kids.
inclination to secretive wisdom. This one doesn't make
Yeah,
any
yeah,
sense.
yeah.
Why would
So
he create them with an inclination to secretive wisdom if he doesn't want them to obtain secretive wisdom? There's already a problem
yeah,
here.
right. Yeah, yeah. You've nailed it there. And then you add
And
on top of that is that this so-called secret is actually the knowledge that he expects them to have, right? Is to know the difference between good and evil and therefore make good choices. So like the authors of the fable are not brilliant people, right? Like so they didn't they're really looking at this as a really cruel and manipulative parental figure that they don't see as cruel and manipulative. They see as like righteous and good, like because their morality is all fucked up. But that's
yeah.
the story they wrote, and it doesn't really jive with modern enlightened moralities, and that's why it creates this conflict.
Yeah,
today.
yeah. Okay, so yeah, so we'll get into the topic of didn't God make them as holy as Adam and Eve? I'm sorry, why did God
Yeah.
not make Adam and
Yes.
Eve as holy as Jesus? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So we get into that. So you'd have to watch another video of ours to get the answer to this. I'm just gonna briefly touch on it and then move on. Me and Carrier in my last interview proved that compatibilism is actually fair because at the end of the day, yeah, it's not the person's fault. They're determined, but they're still knowing and willingly making choices. They're doing what they want, and there's still a real deliberation process. So because and you have to watch the video for specifics. So since we laid a good case down for that, there's no issue with God determining things. So the issue is why didn't God determine Adam and Eve to do good and make them as holy as Christ, who was already doing good in necessity, and obviously the Bible doesn't portray him as a robot. So this is what just gets interesting. So Roman Catholics and actually Calvinists are pretty similar on this issue. So they'll say that for God to determine Adam and Eve to do good was so much of a dignity to be as holy as God that God, even in innocency, did not owe Adam a completely holy nature. And as Jonathan Edwards pointed out, he said, well, it's within God's sovereign power and right that he's under no obligation to prevent men from sinning. He's under no obligation to prevent, either angels or humans from sinning. They have to pass the covenant of works to be owed this efficacious grace or confirming grace that would not have them have a sin inclination so they wouldn't be able to sin. But like under Calvinism, this is so stupid because okay, you assume God doesn't owe them this gift to persevere. But the only way in Calvinism, because they don't believe in libertarian free will, even with Adam before the fall, the only way for Adam to have passed is to be given this extra grace that God doesn't owe them until after they pass. And even
Yeah.
Sam Storms, the Calvinist, the writer, was like, if that's true, then it's God, not Adam, who's the real culprit here. Just read
Yeah.
Fettered Yet Free by Sam Storms on that. So, like, what
Yep.
do you think about this? Like, God doesn't owe them a completely holy nature.
Yeah, and that's backsliding into this sort of immoral immoralities, right? Like this is this idea that keeping people ignorant is a moral good, which in fact it is not, right? And so that somehow like engineers who create things don't owe the people who suffer the consequences of the things they make. That's completely untrue. You are morally obligated to the people who are affected by the things you make. Right? So yeah, absolutely. If there's going to be some downside, first of all, it's worth pointing out that the only downside to eating the tree's fruit was what God did to them. Like there's never explained like how that was bad otherwise, right? So like, what if God didn't do anything? It's like, oh damn it, he ate the fruit. Oh well, and then just moved on. Like, would there have been any negative effects?
Well, if he
Right?
didn't
So
put a
like, there's
prohibition
no
and they
lesson
ate
here.
it,
Right?
yeah, that's a
There's no
good
lesson
point.
here as to why it's bad. Like, why is it wrong to eat the fruit? Like, the story does not ever tell you what is wrong about having that knowledge, right? Um, and so it's that mindset. So this idea that creators don't owe you things is really a frightening thing to see someone say because it means that they don't think that in the businesses they run and the churches they run and the families they run, they don't think they owe anything to the people who suffer the consequences of their choices and actions, right? And that's scary. That means like they're basically to your face defending being an immoral person. They're defending to your face being an irresponsible maker and creator and leader. And I mean that's not defensible at all. They're just telling us that they're awful people. Okay, great. I don't want to talk to you then. Like I don't want you in my life if that's the kind of awful person you are. And then usually when you'll point that out, they say, "Oh no, but I believe that I have these obligations as God doesn't." And it's like, okay, that's a contradiction, right? That doesn't make any sense. You can't say God is good and then strip away everything good about God, right? Like those can't be true at the same time. So, um, anyway, yeah, you're right about that.
Yeah, because it's like, yeah, like what do you mean by good? Well, I mean, ignoring what the standard of good is, we'll go to the ontology of good. Well, it's clear that the ontology of good means to be against evil and not for it. And by God making them morally imperfect, he's actually helping the purposes of evil. And the only way
Yeah.
to be completely
Yes.
for good is to determine them to do good.
Yeah, yeah.
That
No,
without
yeah,
any
that
motivation.
statement, right? Yeah, that statement you gave right there, I think nails it. Yeah, I think that's the way to put it.
That's it. It's all about definitions. You got to get to the definition. And yeah, and it's like because it's like in Roman Catholicism, they're like, well, at least he owed him libertarian freedom, which it's debatable whether it even exists. We're going to get into the problems with libertarian free will. But like in Calvinism, yeah, even when it came to his first sin, he did not have libertarian freedom according to them. Everything's determined by God. So it's like stupid because it's like a terrible picture. Like even with the holy angels like Gabriel and Michael who never sin, like are they off the chopping block? No, because according to Calvinism, even those angels were given a grace they were not owed. And that's why they persevered. And had they not been determined by God to do good, they would have sinned. And God didn't own determining them to do good. So it's like everyone has to admit, like the only way, even the holy angels have to admit, the only way I did good is that God gave me a grace, a holier nature that I didn't deserve. And had He not given me that, I necessarily would have sinned and been in hell. Like it's just like stupid. Like what's the
And
point of
then
being?
that is the reason you don't deserve it. It's a circular argument. Yeah, right. No, it's a self-fulfilling scenario. Yeah. It's super illogical. Yeah. Like Christianity is full of these illogical ideas that they get them stuck in these loops of bad reasoning that it's very hard to get them out of, actually.
Yeah, and then like you have like some Calvinists will go this route, but like amongst hyper Calvinists, they have a system called equal ultimacy, which entails that God's actually the efficient God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit are the efficient causes of Adam's determining him to sin. And it's like that would mean he positively willed him to sin, and he asked them, "How is he holy?" Because they still believe he's holy for being like the devil. They say, "Well, he's holy because God is good no matter what he does, even if he determines sin, because if he does what's grounded in his nature, he's holy." But we already like the ontology of he'd be
Yeah.
violating the ontology of good. You have to ground it in the ontology of good, not his nature. So it's like it's that even that. But like Christians are even going this far. It's like ridiculous.
Yeah. You're right. It gets more complicated because when this story was written, resurrection wasn't a doctrine, right? So the authors of this thing don't believe in resurrection. They don't even believe in an afterlife, really. Not in the sense that modern Christians do. But the idea of getting that resurrection as the redemption, that's much later. That's after the Persian influence, and that gets into Judaism, and then that Christianity evolves out of that. So Christianity has this idea, like, and you find this in the life of Adam and Eve, which is this early pre-Christian story about this. It's kind of fan fiction on the Eden story, and and it tells this story, but basically that Adam gets a blessed burial and will be one of the first to be resurrected from the dead in the end times, and then live forever sinlessly somehow magically. Like 'cause I guess he gets his brain redesigned by God or whatever, so that he no longer makes bad choices. But the idea is that after the resurrection, there are no one will ever sin. There will be no, and why? Like what is the causal cause of that? It has to be like God fixing their mental illness that he's stuck in them, really, right? Like that's the only way
Right.
that you could explain it, right? But that's where they kind of like quote unquote fix this by saying, oh well, Adam will be raised from the dead, so it'll all be evened out in the end, right? So it doesn't matter like hundreds of years of misery he suffered, but he'll have infinite years of joy or whatever, and so like, it balances out. It's fine. Um, but there's still a difference between that scenario and a scenario where there wasn't the hundreds of years of misery, or even one, right? And it's clearly that the one is better than the other. If infinite years of sinless paradise or whatever is good, then it doesn't. Then obviously it's better to have only that, right? Like there's no sense of like, well, he had like
True.
1 year of sin and misery. Like that doesn't make it better, right? Like whatever's good about the sinless paradise is obviously good in and of itself. That's the only reason to have it, right? And so, yeah, there's a lot of contradictions in here, but you can see how like over time they kept trying to reinterpret the story with new ideas they borrowed from other places, and it gets more and more complicated and convoluted till you get like what you're talking about, with like the Calvinists and their weird ass convoluted attempts to try and make this make sense in light of all the other things that they've added on that aren't in the Bible, right? They're not even the stuff they believe is not even really in the New Testament or Old Testament. They're just adding stuff, but then they're stuck with the stuff they added. They can't get rid of it, and so now they have to reinterpret everything. It's like someone who tells a lie and then has to tell a lie to cover the lie, and then has to tell a lie to cover the lie to cover the lie, and eventually they start losing track of the lies, and this is like all contradictory mess, right? And
Point.
that's kind of what Christianity has done to itself over the
Yeah.
last 2,000 years.
Yeah, good point. Alrighty, and to go into our last point, we're going into the fact of God's foreknowledge and how He can't infallibly know the future unless it's been determined. And I think I can conclusively prove this. So let's just go with the example that God creates Adam and all of his inclinations are in equilibrium. 50% inclined to righteousness, 50% to disobedience, 50% to take of secretive wisdom, or anything like, let's just say, he puts a prohibition on petting a cow, and then he inclines Adam to pet a cow. 50% inclines him to pet the cow, 50% inclines him not to. So all of his desires are in equilibrium. Now let's just say under this example, yeah, we kind of went with the Bereans ass. Yeah, let's just say in this example, for the sake of argument, Adam chooses to pet the cow. Now, how could God know infallibly what he would do if Adam's decision making is by definition unpredictable? Because you can't just say God's foreknowledge like William Lane Craig, because it's like, what is there to foreknow? Like, for example, like when Christ,
Yeah.
according to the Bible, when Christ's human nature didn't know the second coming, how come he didn't know it? Because of amnesia, because he lacked the data thing. So likewise, God's infallibility can only work with data. He can infallibly retrieve the data. What is the data here telling God exactly what, not what he could, but what will Adam do? You only have 50-50. None of the desires are determining the will. He could have done otherwise. So by definition, Adam is unpredictable. And if he's unpredictable, God can, it's impossible for him to predict it. Because you can only
Yeah.
predict the unpredictable. You can't get certainty, 100% chance Adam will do X if there's only a 50% chance Adam will do X. Therefore, that means God can't infallibly know the future unless it's been determined. What he said.
Yeah, no, that's correct. I mean, there's you could go even deeper analysis into that too about the idea of that when you take reasons away. So like it's 50-50, but like what reason is Adam using? Like is he flipping a coin? Like what reason?
Random.
What right, exactly. So if it's totally random, then it's not Adam, right? Like it's not Adam's will, it's random, right? So it would be the same as if Adam like closed his eyes and acted not knowing whether he was petting the cow, right? Like so it's like it's the thing is like if it's not coming from the person's own reasoning, then they can't be responsible for it, right? Like this is one of the most fundamental bases of guilt is like you have to actually have done the thing. It can't be someone else who did it, and it can't be like you can't have epileptically jerked and did it. Like you have to actually have made the choice. You yourself have to reason out and done it. And even if you reason out like, well, I'm just going to pick something at random, that's still a decision in a sense. But if you have like if there's an inclination for and an inclination against, that's usually not the situation where we're doing randomness, right? Usually, if we're randomly picking, there's every option is equal, right? In terms of like outcomes. So, and I think this gets right back to the whole why is it wrong to pet the cow, right? So this is the thing, like what are you punishing Adam for, right? Like what is the bad outcome, right? They're like you pet the cow, then what? I like why is that bad? Like if that's not bad, there's no bad outcome then what is Adam supposed to reason through, right, in terms of deciding whether it's right or wrong? And the Christian who's savvy will point out is, oh well, it's obedience to God. And it's like, yeah, that's exactly what the lesson is, which is a horrible lesson, right? You're just saying like it doesn't matter what the consequences are. Fuck that. It's just whatever God says, do it. You slit your kid's throat, do it. He said it, do it, right?
Point.
That's what these people who wrote these stories were like that. This was their moral system. Is if the revered tyrant tells you to do something, you just fucking do it. Fuck all morality
Circumcision is a good example.
yeah, right. Like yeah, like horribly mutilate your babies. You know, yeah, no, it's because God said so. There's no other reason for it, right? Like it doesn't do anything. And certainly back then, like I know they have make up excuses now for how it like supposedly is helpful for disease or whatever, which is all questionable. But they didn't have any such notion back then. They just did it because they thought God was someone told them God said to do it, and that was it. Which is a backwards. It's a very immoral system of thought. Is that to always obey an authority without question, regardless of the consequences, right? Like that's the opposite of moral. That's abrogating moral reasoning. You're abrogating your responsibility as a moral agent when you do that. But that's a modern understanding of wisdom and morality, and maturity. Like they didn't have that back then. So they think it's actually a good lesson that you should just always obey God no matter what horrible thing he tells you to do. And that's just not a sensible worldview, right? It's certainly a super censurable worldview. But that's the thing is where I get to this, the 50-50 inclination, like you're right about that. Like it's well, then there's no real reason to punish Adam if you created him in a situation and deliberately given him a set of information that leaves him no reason to prefer one thing or the other, then there's no logic in punishing him for it. Because you created the situation where he could just randomly do it, and like pet a cow. Like what's the
Now,
deal?
why didn't you
Um,
create him with an inclination only to not pet the cow? Like
Yeah, right. Like I don't
either
want to
way,
pet cows.
inclinations
I
aren't
don't
his
know
fault;
why. I
it's
just
God's fault.
yeah, exactly. It's like pet the snake. Why would you pet the snake? Because like I hate snakes, right? Snakes are dangerous. Um, yeah, right. Like how are you engineering them? But and you're right. That's the thing you're focusing on is that side of it. It doesn't make any sense. But what I'm bringing up is the fact that it doesn't make any sense on the other side of this equation, which is why is it even bad? right? Like, why is petting the cow even bad? Why is eating the tree fruit bad? Like, there's no real
You're right.
sensible reason why these are actually consequentially bad acts, other than the fact that God is an asshole and will like torture you. Like, and then
Yeah,
that's
I mean,
not a good reason, right? Like, that's
yeah, yeah, none of those things go against natural order because you could argue like, okay, if I like slit my throat, that's going against natural law. Like the purpose of my throat's not to be slit. That's why I experience, if I were to do it, I
right. I guess
experience
you're right.
pain. It's a good thing to preserve life. See, that's
Yeah,
something else. But like taking, petting the cow, it's just like secret of wisdom. There's nothing wrong with those things. There's nothing against natural law in and of themselves of taking secret of wisdom. And
yeah,
the question you brought up is the question I brought up a couple of days ago when I was thinking of it. Like, suppose God put no prohibition on the secret of wisdom tree. What would have happened if Adam would have taken of the secret of wisdom tree? If the answer is he would have gone on a sinful nature and a strong propensity to sin, then God's telling him to sin. It's like it
right.
doesn't like it
You
doesn't
know,
work even if there's no prohibition.
yeah, it just occurred to me that there is a direct analogy right now, which is the whole AI ethics thing that's going on right now, um, where we're deliberately creating AIs that have no knowledge. They do not know whether anything they do is good or bad, right? They have no moral knowledge. And where lots of people are pointing out, like, this is going to lead to disastrous results because AI is going to just run roughshod over it and do like immoral things because it doesn't know it's wrong. Um, and that you have on one side people defending this is like, well, we shouldn't teach AI moral knowledge, but if you want AI to be responsible and act responsibly, you better teach it moral knowledge. Like, why wouldn't you? Like, that's what you
True.
should want to do, right? So that they will be
Peaceful for
better moral
society.
agents. Yeah. And so, like, it by the design of the story, God should have told them to eat the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil so that they would possess knowledge,
More.
yeah, to make good moral decisions so that they would understand what was good and bad and why, right? Like that's literally what you should do. Um, and so to not do it is clearly disastrous and bad design. So all the people who want amoral AI are bad engineers. And they're also like dangerous engineers because they're callously disinterested in all the harms that are going to result to everybody else from promoting this sort of amoral AI system. And so it's obviously a better morally responsible engineer would not do that. They would say we got to have AI that has moral reasoning. Now, of course, current AI is all fake pseudo AI. It doesn't really have reasoning at all. But this idea that like at some point we got to start like what if we ever get to AGI, actual artificial general intelligence, it needs moral knowledge, right? That's got a fundamental, and that is our moral responsibility. We owe it that, right? We owe ourselves that. We owe everyone else, all the victims, all the potential victims. We owe them to give this AI moral knowledge. And so and people who want to know about like what do I mean by moral knowledge for an AI and stuff like that, I actually have articles on my blog about this. So you can go. There's an AI tag under my category list on the right hand side of my blog, which is richardcarrier.info. Select the AI tag, and I think that brings up all of the stuff I'm talking about.
Yeah, yeah, and like bad creation, bad creator. So we owe it,
Yeah,
the AI to have moral culpability, or to understand right from wrong, because the only way that we can be good creators is if we create the AI good with the knowledge of good and evil. So that's a
yeah,
good point. And then secondly,
yep,
yeah, like I was just thinking, just to go back to the libertarian free will example, like a libertarian free will could say, okay, yeah, why make one go off of one inclination and not another if everything's in equilibrium? Well, they can just say, well, they just did. But like that's the most they can say, by the way. But it's like, why did they just? What's the reason? So then you have to say, well, there was no reason they chose one and not another. They just did. Which because it's like in libertarian free will, you have to make a decision. Even if it could have been otherwise, you necessarily have to choose. Even if I sit here and say, I'm not going to choose, like I'm
that is a
choosing to
choice.
not do anything. Yeah, so you have
Yeah,
to
yeah,
choose. So you have to do a process of elimination because you can
yep.
only choose. You have to, yeah, one thing. Even if in the other example of libertarian free will,
Even if you're choosing to do something at random, like yeah, I don't know what flavor ice cream I want, I'm just going to pick one at random. You're still choosing, rationally choosing to do it randomly, right? So like you have a reason in backstory as to why you're doing it randomly, right? So that gets you to the inclination. Is doing it randomly a good inclination or a bad inclination? So be
it's like
like,
taking it back.
should I shoot this woman in the face because she's blocking traffic? Right? Like so I'm going to do 50-50 on this. The very idea that you would think it's okay to randomly decide that It tells you that you have your inclination is bad already, bad
Yeah.
design, bad inclination. So you don't get off the hook by just saying that I'm picking at random, right? So that picking at random is itself a choice to do. So
Mhm.
so yeah, like that illustrates how your point holds, right? It holds for everything. There's no way around this, right? There's no way to get out of this problem. And for people who are interested in this, we have that other video you and I did on free will. And again, on my blog under the category tag, free will is on there. So I've written a lot of things about free will theory and so forth.
Yeah. And so, like, you know, because you have to do a process of elimination. Like, even in the other example of libertarian free will, say you choose otherwise, you still have to do a process of elimination. You have to narrow it down to one. So, if you have like two inclinations, you have to do a process of elimination to narrow it down to
Yeah.
one. What's the
Yep.
process of elimination going to be in libertarian free will? You
Exactly.
can't go one, what's the greatest desire, what's the least desire, because none of the desires is determining.
Yeah.
So, the process of elimination is you just randomly choosing. It's like saying, and it's like a random choice, like, it's like almost like oxymoronic. It's like saying you can rationalize not doing something rationally. It's like a random choice. It like doesn't make sense metaphysically.
Yeah,
So it's
and
like
to carry that forward, so like the even the choice to not think about it, like I'm not going to do a rational comparison, like the thing you're just talking about. You could choose not to do that and just whatever the strongest inclination is, I'm just going to go with it. And that's still a decision, right? The decision not to be deliberative about it is a decision. Is that
yeah,
decision to not be deliberative, is that a good or bad decision? So there's still the same metric going on there, right? And we even recognize in law when that isn't the case. So like if you react to something in a way that you didn't even have time to consider being deliberative about it, um, then actually you can be acquitted. Because it could be like you're expected to like do a thing in when you have no time to make a decision, whatever the natural inclination is, as long as that inclination is like a sensible thing to do, which would be like jumping out of the way of something coming at you, right? So like if something's coming at you, you jump out of the way, and there wasn't any possible way that you could have deliberately figured out which direction to jump, and you jump and you break someone's street sign or something like that. Like you couldn't be held liable for that because that's called force majeure. So you're like you had to jump out of the way. Like you can't be responsible for it. If anything, the person who made you jump out of the way is probably responsible for the broken sign, right? So there's no way to get back to the thing that libertarian free willers want to get back to. There's always a causal system involved, and there has to be a causal system involved in order to judge someone. Like
cause
to
and
even
effect. Yeah,
judge whether they're doing good or evil, you need that causal system. If it isn't causally deterministic, there is no good or evil. That's the whole, like the person can only be judged based on what their inclinations and their own desires and reasoning have caused to happen. If you take cause out of it, then they're not even responsible anymore for what they do. But yeah,
yeah.
okay. So I unfortunately I have to go. I have to
Okay.
go grab lunch, but good talk. So it was nice doing this.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, and yeah, thank you for being on. And if anyone wants to check out Richard Carrier, go on his website. Alrighty, I'll send you the link later. Thank you.